You know, a lot of people talk about reading the room, but the truth is the room is actually reading you. The hardest lesson in emotional intelligence isn't out there, it's in here. Let me prove it. Hi, and welcome to the Everyday Diplomat. I'm Michael Forras, a retired Marine Sergeant Major, former U.S. diplomat, and somebody who spent the better part of 20 years leading high-performing teams through crisis, conflict, and constant change. Through every one of those challenges, one truth kept on showing up. The hardest part of emotional intelligence isn't actually about understanding other people. It's about understanding yourself. No one knows what's going on inside of there. In combat zones, embassy halls, and corporate boardrooms, I've seen that leadership always begins in the same place, with self-awareness, because until you can actually recognize your own patterns, your emotions, they're going to run the show, even when you think that you're in control. So today, we're breaking down what that really means, not as a theory, but as a lived skill that actually separates those who react under pressure from those who lead through it. Self-awareness is where emotional intelligence begins. Before you can actually read a room, you have to first read yourself, and that's a lot harder than most people think. In the military, most operations start with good reconnaissance. You study the terrain before you actually move through it. Leadership is exactly the same way. You have to understand your own terrain, your emotions, your habits, your reactions before you can actually lead other people through theirs. When I was a young leader, I thought that awareness meant knowing my strengths, but real self-awareness showed up the first time that somebody told me that I was intimidating when I didn't mean to be. I wasn't angry, I wasn't yelling, but the way that I carried myself apparently made people hesitate before speaking up. That moment actually hit me pretty hard because it forced me to actually look in the mirror and realize that intent doesn't always equal impact. That was the first time that I actually understood that self-awareness isn't about judgment, it's about recognition. It's the courage to admit that the version of ourselves that we see in our head isn't always the version that other people get to experience. Leaders who practice self-awareness, they learn to pause before they act. They understand that what they feel will actually shape what they say, and what they say will then shape how people around them respond. This isn't weakness, it's presence. And the moment that you start seeing yourself clearly, you begin to see your team differently as well. You recognize that everybody has triggers, patterns, and blind spots, including you. That awareness changes how you lead, how you communicate, and how you earn other people's trust. This is where the hardest lesson in emotional intelligence actually starts. It's not about control over others. It's about honesty with yourself. And if you're somebody who wants to go deeper into what this type of self-awareness looks like under the pressure, make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to our channel, because next week we're going to be talking about psychological safety in high-stakes environments where this foundation gets put to the test. All right, so self-awareness doesn't end once you recognize your emotions. That's just where it all begins. The real test here is what happens next when something pushes your buttons and you actually feel the reaction rising before you can stop it. It might be a comment that somebody else made that hits you wrong, a plan that falls apart, or a situation where somebody is completely misreading your intent. In that instant, you have a choice. You always have a choice. You can either react or you can respond. During my career, there were moments when things went sideways incredibly fast. Communications broke down, tensions ran high, and the pressure felt heavy enough to choke progress. Early on, I thought that staying quiet meant staying in control, but silence under pressure isn't composure at all. It's really just a delay tactic. Real composure is when you actually feel the emotion fully, you recognize it for what it is, and then you decide how to use it. Marcus Aurelius once said that if you're distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. I love that one. That quote changed how I handled stress, and it reminded me that no situation actually controls me unless I give it permission to. The trigger isn't the problem, my perception of it is. Learning to see that space, the small gap between stimulus and response, is where emotional intelligence actually lives. It's the space that separates impulsive leaders from intentional ones. When you understand what actually fuels your reactions, you begin to lead with awareness instead of your instinct. You catch yourself before your tone turns sharp, before frustrations become sarcasm, and before your emotions begin to blind your judgment. Emotional intelligence doesn't erase emotion. It actually gives you the discipline to use it with purpose. That's the difference between reacting to your environment and influencing it. So self-awareness grows the fastest when you let other people hold up the mirror. We're talking about metaphors here, so there's no actual mirror. We all have blind spots, not because we lack any form of discipline or intelligence, but because we experience life from the inside out. Feedback gives us the outside view that we can't see alone. During my career, there were times where junior Marines or even my colleagues quietly pulled me aside and said something that made me pause. It was never overly dramatic, and it might have been something as simple as, "Hey, the way that came across, I don't think that they understood it the way that you meant it." Those moments actually mattered to me really greatly. And yeah, they were uncomfortable, but they made me better. At first, my instinct was always to defend myself. That's how we all want to feel, to explain what I actually meant. But over time, I learned that my intent does not erase the impact of my words. If somebody experiences you differently than you intended, that perception becomes their reality. And as a leader, you own that. The most effective leaders that I've ever had the privilege of working with were the ones who actually created a space for those truths. They made it safe for people to actually speak honestly, even when the message wasn't flattering. They listened without interrupting, they reflected, and then they adjusted. Feedback isn't always fun, but it's the fastest route to growth because it actually reveals the difference between how we see ourselves and how other people experience us. That gap is where leadership development really happens. And if you're stepping into a new leadership role or you're trying to earn trust in your first 30 days, this type of awareness is absolutely essential. That is exactly why I built the First 30 Days course. It's designed to help new leaders start strong, leading with clarity, and avoiding the mistakes that come from blind spots. You can find the link for the course in the description below, because the sooner that you actually learn to invite honest feedback, the sooner you start leading with real influence. Emotional intelligence is not something that you merely talk about. It's something that people feel when they're all around you. When the pressure begins to rise, people watch how you carry yourself. They look for cues, they listen to your tone, and they read your body language, and whether you realize it or not, they're actually taking their emotional leads from you. If you lose your balance, they're going to lose theirs. If you stay grounded, they're going to steady themselves as well. I've seen moments where things went wrong really fast. Schedules fell apart, resources disappeared, and tempers began to boil. You ever experience one of those situations? Those are always fun. The people who brought calm into those situations, they weren't the ones that were pretending that everything was fine. They were the ones who actually knew themselves well enough to regulate their emotions in real time. They understood that their mood set the climate. Calm isn't the absence of pressure. It's the ability to stay aware of what you feel and then still choose your response. It's the outer expression of inner discipline. When I served as a senior enlisted leader, as a sergeant major and a first sergeant, there were times when frustration was justified. Things weren't working, deadlines were closing in, and people were waiting for a reaction. But I learned really quick that if I raised my voice, I gave everybody permission to also raise theirs. If I stayed composed, I gave everybody a reason to lower theirs. That's what self-awareness in action looks like. You don't just manage yourself for your own sake. You do it for the people who actually depend on you. Calm leaders build trust because they create a sense of safety. They make it possible for other people to think clearly, to speak honestly, and to act decisively. The opposite is also true. If your emotions run completely unchecked, your team spends more energy managing your moods than managing the mission. Composure does not mean suppressing emotion. It means directing it with purpose. It means understanding that leadership is emotional work and that your presence can either steady the room or completely shake it apart. Your team is always going to take its cue from you. Make sure that you're sending one that's worth following. One of the hardest lessons in honing your emotional intelligence is understanding that it's like a train ride where you never actually reach your final destination. Self-awareness isn't a milestone that you have that aha moment and you actually reach. It's more of a muscle that you strengthen over time. The moment that you think that you've mastered it, life has a funny way of actually giving you a situation that humbles you all over again. Every leader, no matter how experienced, has blind spots. The goal isn't to eliminate them all. The goal is for you to stay curious enough to actually keep finding them before they become real problems. That takes discipline. It means paying attention to how you show up each and every day. It means noticing your tone, your posture, and the energy that you bring into every single conversation. It means being honest enough to actually admit when you're off balance and then humble enough to recalibrate before it affects anybody or anything else. I still do this in my work daily. Sometimes it's as simple as taking a moment before walking into a room and asking myself, what are people about to experience from me? Other times it's reflecting after a very long day and asking, did my actions actually match my intent today? Those small checkpoints are how awareness stays sharp. You don't need to meditate for an hour or keep a journal full of philosophy to practice this emotional intelligence. You just need the willingness to pause long enough to think, to feel, and then to choose your next move with absolute attention. And if you want to keep sharpening that skill week by week, go ahead and join the Diplomat's Dispatch. It's our newsletter where I share real-world leadership lessons, practical habits that actually strengthen self-awareness, and stories that keep you grounded in real practice. The link is in the description below, and it's completely free. When you sign up, I'll also go ahead and send you a free copy of my quick reference guide, 10 Steps to Leading High-Performing Teams. It's a very concise, practical resource designed to help you shape your leadership style, strengthen team dynamics, and lead with purpose in any environment. Because this work never ends. The moment you stop paying attention to how you lead, you start leading by accident, which is not a good thing. The best leaders never stop learning about themselves. They stay students of their own emotions, and they stay humble, reflective, and absolutely intentional. That's what mastery looks like. It's not perfection, but awareness that keeps improving with practice. One of the hardest lessons in all of emotional intelligence isn't about managing other people. It's about managing yourself. It's realizing that the work never truly stops. And the moment that you think you've figured it out, life is always going to test how much you've actually learned. Self-awareness is that difference between reacting and responding, between leading by impulse and leading by your intention. It's what turns authority into trust and experience into influence. And the truth is, this lesson doesn't get easier with time. It just gets a lot clearer. You start to see that emotional intelligence isn't about perfection. It's about honesty, humility, and the courage for you to keep improving. Before you start your next day, take 10 seconds and just ask yourself one question. What energy am I bringing into the room today? Because leadership always starts within. Thank you very much for watching the Everyday Diplomat. I appreciate you spending this time with me, and I hope this message actually helps you lead with greater purpose and awareness. If you found any value in today's episode, go ahead and share it with somebody who leads other people or somebody who's learning to lead themselves. It might be the reminder that they just needed. I'll see you next week when we dive into psychological safety in high-stake environments, how calm leadership creates trust when everything else is on the line. Until then, take care of your people, take care of yourself, and remember, every business is a people business.